We are here at the Baltimore Book Festival. It's a little hazy, a little misty, but it is clearing up, and it's supposed to clear up throughout the afternoon. We'll see how long I can stay live. I'm trying to run to go catch Gloria Edim. I think her session starts at 12. She's with Well Read Black Girls. And if hopefully we'll have some time. If I do have to put away the live footage, it's okay. I'll get some still shots later. And see you soon. I am live on Twitch, and shortly I'll be live on Instagram as well. All right, let me get all this in order. Now that I'm thinking about it, I may have my little umbrella that I can hook. Sorry, you guys can take off. Stay in there for a second. This is still the farmers market going on today, guys. If you wanted to come down, check out the Baltimore Book Festival. Grab you a bite to eat. Fresh produce and flowers. This is every Saturday morning here in the Waverly neighborhood off of Barclay Street in East Baltimore. And I am rushing to find the right stage.
Because of
Asshole.
Got spanked.
Yeah, he did. So we're almost there. Maybe I should have just walked down Barkley. I think I went the wrong way. We are in the Waverly Barkley area right near North Charles Street in Baltimore near the Johns Hopkins University campus. The colorful homes, it's a motif in this area. Not necessarily pride, a lot of that, which is awesome. But this neighborhood has always had lively porches. It's a bike for sale, y'all. Hi. Here we are. Yeah, I should have just kept on down Barkley. Made a big circle, you guys. And I'm a little behind, so I'm sure it's packed by now, but I'm hoping the weather, well, I don't hope the weather kept people away, but yeah, I should probably am right on time. And this is Baltimore Book Festival. I remember when we had it at Enoch Pratt Library. All right, we're gonna take a little bit walk around. Probably gonna have to do that later because I want to have time to set up. So again, we are down here. Books and Bounty is live at the Baltimore Book Festival. Make sure you come out, say hello to your neighbors, say hello to your community, meet some local authors, some national authors, buy some books, get some books signed, and fellowship with your fellow bookworms. I'm sure a lot of people are going to start heading down to this stage in a little bit. So like I said, I'm going to set up soon. We're going to do a quick walkthrough and then come back to meet each of the authors or small businesses that are here today. A lot of little things are open. They're throwing a lot of the small businesses today. Are throwing specials. This is one I have actually not been in yet. Oh no, this is the one connected to Red Emma, so I'm gonna take you in here real quick. So Normal's Books. Good morning. This is actually not the one I've been in yet. So just give you a little bit of walkthrough, like I said. I'm gonna be setting up soon for the first session at 12:15. Move back in. I just wanted to show you what neighborhood we were in. Seems like there could still even be some folks setting up, or they're coming from out of state. The weather may have thwarted their efforts. But yeah, just to let y'all know, we right here on Greenmount Avenue, y'all. The Baltimore Book Festival. Northeast Baltimore. Greenmount Avenue. Right here at 31st and Barclay. Red Emma's is just up that way. There's a new chocolatier around here. I mean, y'all would not believe what Greenmount Avenue and 33rd is turning into. Luckily, though, I see a lot of black business owners. Most of them are all local, at least. We'll talk about all that later. Today is about the Baltimore Book Festival, and I'm so glad that it's here in the Waverly neighborhood. Like I said, we're going to come back and look at all this stuff in detail later.
They had inside their vehicle, and they came out with like little freaked out. Let me help you.
Excuse me, sorry.
Let me help you. Here.
I don't know if I just walked past Gloria Dean or not. I don't know. I think I may have. I think I just did. Yep, I did. Almost bumped right into her. Almost ran over her son. Hi, Leslie. How are you? Long time no see. I'm Stephanie from the Banner. Yes. I said I had to come out here to make sure I saw you in glory. I know you're excited. I just almost ran her son over just now by accident. I'm live, by the way. If you want to say hi to folks, Books and Bounty.
Baltimore Banner. I'm going to be doing a discussion and conversation with Gloria Edom of Well-Read Black Girl fame. I'm so excited and trying not to fangirl.
Right, that's what I'm trying not to do as well, right? I'm here on a business. Like,
So I met her. She don't remember me. I met her years ago when she was speaking in West Palm Beach when the anthology came out.
yeah.
And we kept in touch, and then COVID happened, and then nobody kept in touch with nobody, and it was insane. So when they asked me to do this, I was like, say less.
Say less. Yes, I'm so excited for the opportunity. I'm excited to be here. And I'm like, I didn't want I was running late, and I was just like, I don't want the weather to thwart turnout, but I'm also like, well, maybe I'll get a seat.
It's here. I think people kind of like got here early. I think maybe they've committed, to being here. I see a lot of umbrellas. So
Yeah, I thought I had mine as well, so I didn't bring one either. They said it was supposed to be
overcast.
Yeah, but here we are.
Here we are.
So we'll see.
Like I said, I'm hoping that people still come out.
And I'm glad this is tinted. Yeah, so that's great.
Yeah, because I was sitting here going, can I borrow your umbrella? Be sitting here reading my questions like this.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get set up shortly. All right, good luck. Can I get this? I left mine at home. Both of these.
Both of these, yeah.
Check this out.
39.21.
Oops, sorry. Had to get my phone out. So this is Leslie Gray Streeter. We just met her. She was the Baltimore banner. She's going to be facilitating the session with Gloria Deem. And hopefully I can get them both signed today. We're with Greedy Reads. Down here they have a shop in Remington in Fells Point, right? And what's your name?
Santiago.
Santiago, nice to meet you. When I was more on that side working at the banner, I was more at the Gritty Reads location in Fells Point more often. I need to get back over there soon. All right, so let me go ahead and pay for my stuff.
Okay, you set up right here.
Thank you. I'll be stopping by. You'll probably see more of me. I'm with Books and Bounty now.
Let me set that up again.
Okay.
Let me flag these if you want to get them signed.
Yes.
Yes. You're all set. And your receipt goes right to your email.
Okay, great. And that the signing is after, right?
Yeah,
of course.
It's actually going to be in there.
In there. Awesome. That's even better. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, just bear with me while I set up the. I had it on this selfie handle because it's more stable, but give me a minute.
Testing. Hello everyone, welcome to the 31st Street stage. My name is Sherry Woods. I'm 9 months new to the City Lit Board, a literary nonprofit in Baltimore. Thank you for joining us for the return of the Baltimore Book Festival, celebrating its 25th year, where we showcase over 100 authors, with so many more working behind the scenes to make this event happen. We've all been working in collaboration to make this event a success. City Lit wants to thanks Red Emma's, Waverly Main Street, Peabody Brewery, the Mayor's Office, the members of the BOPA staff, especially the Lady Kate, Tia Goodson, and Rachel Gatone. We also thank the Clifton House and Gritty Reads, our festival bookseller. We want to shout out our City Lit gladiators. Any gladiators in the house? Raise your hands. Our new executive assistant to our executive director, Lillian Jacobson. Lillian, who joined us a mere 2 weeks ago and has been invaluable in getting us here. If you are a fellow board member or a member of our leadership council, please stand or wave your hand to be acknowledged. We also want to thank the many sponsors listed on our festival bookmark who have supported our small but fierce nonprofit over the years. Before we begin today's program with the wonderful Leslie Grace Streeter hosting our featured guest author, please mark your calendars for our free upcoming events. On Sunday, October 13th, as part of Free Fall Baltimore, we offer a special edition of the City Lit Studio, Writers on Craft, Creativity, and Community, in partnership with Lyric Baltimore. Publishing industry professionals will talk about submissions and ways to get your book noticed, featuring Yadon Israel, Senior Editor at Simon & Schuster, Dawn Rafael, Developmental Editor, and Krishan Trotman, Vice President of Legacy Lit. On November 7th to 10th in Minneapolis this year for our annual Write Like a Mother's Retreat. Thanks to the NEA, there's a virtual component for Maryland mothers who write. And on Sunday, December 8th at the Motor House, we will present our second A Home for the Heart to Live In, our annual gathering of Cave Canem poets. This year, one of the favorite featured poets is one of my favorites, Dan S. Smith. So today I have the honor of introducing Praise Song for the Books That Cradled Me, featuring the phenomenon known as well-read Black girl, Glory Edom, who introduces us to her forthcoming memoir, Gather Me. Leslie Grace Streeter, author of Black Widow and recently named the best columnist by Baltimore Magazine, will engage Glory in conversation. Please join me in welcoming them to the Baltimore Book Festival.
Oh my goodness, thank you for coming out in the rain.
Yes.
And staying and not going, forget this and leaving. So thank you so much. I am so excited. I reminded Glory that we actually met years ago before my book came out in Florida, and I was fangirling out a little bit, and I'm trying not to do that, but I'm sure all of you who are familiar with her, just the amazing impact that she's had in creating an opportunity for Black women who read and to write to find each other, whether the book is brand new or 50 years old, and to have that dialogue together. But I'm going to start, those of you who know who I am know I do a lot about pop culture and stuff. There's always going to be a pop culture reference. So, first question. In the 2002 pop culture classic, Brown Sugar, yes, Sanaa Lathan's character, Sydney, is a journalist who starts every interview that she does with musicians with, when did you fall in love with hip-hop? And it's not just what's your favorite book, what's your favorite song, or who's your favorite rapper. It assumes a very deep love that both she and the person that she's interviewing share. So, to steal from Sanaa Lathan, when did you fall in love with books?
Oh, I love that. First of all, Brown Sugar is one of my favorite movies. Like, I love to be in pop culture allegiance with that. Okay, so
My divorce!
Yes.
See that movie. It's good.
Okay, put it on your Netflix. So, when did I first fall in love with literature, with books? That's such a big question. And I would say, at what? 3-4 years old, I was always like reading with my mother. She would read the Bible to me. She would tell me like just stories that she made up out of thin air. And so I was always surrounded by storytelling, even with my father too. Just that they always like told me stories. And then I started to really go to the library and like really have an understanding when I started school. So I lived in the library with my younger brothers. We went there all the time. It was just part of our makeup. I think when I started to really see myself reflected, that's a different kind of question. But I was always in love with books. I loved the Berenstain Bears. I did like Babysitter's Club. I did all these things that kind of took me into a different world or helped me understand myself. So the reading, part of my makeup.
It's amazing. One of the things, when you're younger and you are really become a voracious reader, you'll read anything.
Yes.
Anything that's around. Like, I would get so bored. This is in the 80s, 70s and 80s, pre-internet. Like, we would read the side of the cereal box.
Oh, yeah.
You read anything that's around. And one of the things I noticed about, if you guys have not read her book, it groups parts of her life into books and sometimes songs and sometimes poems that were beneficial to her at that time. And in the beginning, it's like Aesop's Fables, the big book of Bible stories, and Berenstain Bears. It's kind of eclectic, but they all there's a moral to them. There's a...
And it's making me, so I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. I grew up in Northern Virginia, and one memory I have like very distinctly was my mom used to pull out if you're from D.C., they used to have like the mini post in the Washington Post. You guys remember that? It was like, it was like a mini newspaper. My mom would like pull those out and make a collection of that. So I would like go through, do like my highlights and do like my mini posts every Sunday. But yeah, the book, the memoir comes out at the end of October, and I did just really go through my journals and think through the different books that had a really lasting impact on my life, and think about the memories or the stories that connected to those. So I grew up Presbyterian, and my family is very religious, very spiritual, and so we actually got this book of Yellow Bible stories. It was a gift from like the Jehovah's Witnesses, like they got those books. But I remember being so in love with that book because of the illustration. I thought like it was so beautiful, and it was like the yellow cover with the red font on it, and that was like one of the first books I really wanted to read from. So I have like all these memories really tied to books, just like a song, just like a piece of artwork. Like you see it, and it brings back these memories of your childhood or your college life. So many things that happen within your life.
That's beautiful. My sister and I grew up in Northwood near Morgan State, and we shared a room when we were little, so my parents' books spilled into our room. So the first 3 things I remember reading that were significant were Little Women, which was given to us. There was a Reader's Digest condensed version of like a story about Elizabeth Tudor, about Queen Elizabeth, and For Colored Girls, which was something I probably was very too young to read, but it was there. What's the first book that you read that you went, I don't know if this should be something I read?
And sometimes I feel like, is this cliche? I feel like most people say this, but it really was Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Cave Bird Sings. And I read that book and had a really connection with her because of her relationship with her little brother. And so I'm very close. I have 2 siblings. I have a big gap between my youngest one. We're 13 years apart, and then my brother Maurice, we are 5 years apart. So me and Maurice like really grew up together, and it took a lot of time taking care of him. And so when I read the part about Maya Angelou taking care of her brother Bailey and their connection, and I just connected with that. But then there were parts where I got to, I was like, oh, I do not understand like, you know, sexual assault or like the things that she was like dealing with. It really went over my head, but so I was reading it, but I didn't fully comprehend. Like I didn't have like it wasn't age appropriate for me, and so I wasn't having conversations or talking through it. I just was reading it, and as an adult, I do recognize the things that I would read and pronounce incorrectly. Like, you know how you read something in your head, but you don't really know how it's pronounced, and then later on you hear someone say it, you're like, oh, that's how it's supposed to be. I felt like I had so many moments of like reading things that were, you know, complicated to say the least, but not having someone to actually have a conversation with.
That happens once again. You're younger than me, but like growing up, like the internet taught me a lot of things I thought I knew. It's like, oh, that's what that was.
Yeah.
Because you never heard, there wasn't video, you know,
Yeah.
and certainly not on demand. You couldn't Google it and go, how do you pronounce this word?
Oh yeah.
That's great. I read Color Purple. We were living overseas, and I was like 12, and we just basically read anything that was in English. So my parents had, I was like, this is probably not something that I should read. But nobody stopped me. So it was what it was. We had a conversation right before about being a memoirist, that when you write things about your personal life and then people tell you, I told you, that's how you know that. Why, it's such a vulnerable thing to do. Why did you decide to write a memoir?
There's two moments. So when I first started the Well-Read Black Girl book club, I was like, man, like there's all kinds of things that have happened to me. I'm optimistic. I'm also very like pragmatic. I feel like I'm a realistic optimist. And so I just always have an energy or an enthusiasm because I feel very hopeful. But I'm not always happy. And so like I think the delusion of like social media and even just like the aesthetic of things, it's like, oh wow, you look this way. So people can project a certain idea or their biases upon you. And I just wanted to be really vulnerable and revealing that like I have overcome a lot of things throughout my life, and they have not made me downtrodden. They just like really inspired me to work harder. So I did decide to talk about my family's experience with mental illness, with my relationships that have not always gone as I expected them to, and even my experience with motherhood. Like I just wanted to be very honest, almost have this like this end note to this phase of my life, my 20s and 30s, and I'm now 40.
Shout out for 40.
Almost there.
It's been a so far decade. It's feeling really optimistic, feels good. And so I just really wanted to share all the things that I experienced and hopefully inspire others and let them know that they can be honest and true to their story and still have success. And success looks different too, in a lot of different ways, you know. So it was, for me, it just felt like pouring out. But then I did kind of forget that, like, yes, people would ask me about things. So I was like, oh, now it's like a second part of this experience, me engaging with people.
And it was because people ask you like specific things that may have been, because no one knows, you just write it and they assume that you're going to respond to it because you're the one that brought it up. And you go, oh, I wasn't expecting to answer that.
Yeah.
And I find that it sometimes is audience specific.
Yeah.
When you wrote it, when you just now talked about the woman who's like too happy, one of the things I like about the books that you have represented is that it's a huge swath of the Black experience, the Black female experience. It's not all just for colored girls. It's not all just, yes, it's a trip being a Black woman in this country, but also there is joy, and also there is understanding, and it's not all gloom all the time. So I very much appreciate that. Why did you decide to group it chronologically with the books, which I thought worked really well?
I experimented with different formats, and I had so many different iterations of this. Initially, I focused heavily on the relationship between my mother and I had the book divided into letters. And so it was like letters between my mother and I, and then my mother read it and was like, take out my letter. And she was like, no, thank you. And I was like, oh, okay, that format will not work. And so then I had to go back to the drawing board, and I started to like pull out the books, and I was working with my editor, and it just kind of fell into place really organically. And I do really think of like books as, again, memories on my bookshelf, So I was kind of thinking of that way. Like, okay, what are the books that really impacted me from 3 to 6, and then I was thinking about like being a teen in high school, and I had a really unique experience with one of my English teachers that would stood out in her book, and then college and onward. So it kind of fell into place.
I want to ask you about that. She writes about how she had this teacher who I assume was a white male, who she really enjoyed his suggestions and experience, and then came across a book that he did not necessarily get in the way he did. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so when I took, AP Lit in high school and middle school, those things. And so on our syllabus, we had an opportunity to really read so many incredible books. So we read, To Kill a Mockingbird, and we read, all the books that you're supposed to read. We did Shakespeare, we did all those things. And then it was time to read Maya Angelou. And I was very excited because I had read it before. I had read it in middle school, and again, didn't have a firm understanding of it. So I was excited to talk about it in a space where we could have some discourse, and I could really think about the analysis of the book. And he was a little bit like dismissive of her writing. And so this was the first time I was able to, it took me aback. I didn't have the words for it initially, because I was just like, what do you mean you don't, like, her grammar is incorrect? Like, what do you mean? Like, I just had all these questions about form and what it means to write in, like, the Black oral tradition. And I was both my parents are Nigerian, so I was very immersed in thinking about the diaspora. Just because of our home life, that was very normal, but that never, like, seeped into my classroom. So I thought this was the first time we're going to be talking about, Black literature in a way that's, like, disconnected simply from slavery. So when he made his comments, I was very disappointed because, again, this was like one of my he's still one of my favorite high school teachers that made a huge difference in my life. He made me just sharpen my arguments and just feel like very confident as a writer. So I was disappointed that he didn't see the value or didn't interpret Maya Angelou the way that I wanted him to.
Well, it's interesting too, because we all know that if something had been written in French, it would a language that is considered a language and not African American vernacular English. So many people who, Zora Neale Hurston is one of my absolute favorites, and people misunderstanding that and discounting it. Honestly, I think sometimes they look for reasons to discount it.
I agree. I think, well, again, like when you're talking about all the African American form and language and not in dismissing its scholarship, it's insulting. And me at 15, 16 didn't have the language to debate him, but what I found was us going back and forth, and I even went back and, because I had to like almost fact check my memories. I went back to my girlfriends in high school. I'm like, do you remember what happened in Mr. Burns' class? Can we like talk through that? And they were like, yes, we remember that argument. We remember you just being very bold and loud in class and challenging him. And what his response did do something for me, because he wasn't like, he took a step back and was like, oh, I recognize that I made a mistake. And like, I need you to, if we're gonna debate this, like, let's debate it. So he's like, if you feel upset about it, tell me why. And so I had to like go back home, write out my argument, think through it, like really understand how I was feeling and not simply respond emotionally. Because in class, it just hit me as like, this is not right.
And that's the thing, I think that you have, once again, the fangirl, you have created, along with a lot of other people, an opportunity to legitimize something that should not need to be legitimized, but the very organic literary output of African American writers and African writers, people of the diaspora, and it just means a lot. What right now would you say is the landscape for Black authors, particularly Black female authors? Is it different than it was when you first started this project?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like it's more inviting, there's more discourse happening. People in the publishing industry recognize that the work of Black women and by Black writers is so essential to the canon, and I think there are a lot of people that are advocating what needs to happen now, like outside of the visibility. I think behind the scenes, when we think about the industry, when we think about the ecosystem of what publishing is, that we need to place more attention and more value on marketing, marketing the team, like the editorial team. So when we are thinking of like editors who are with companies like Public, PRH, Penguin Random House, or Simon & Schuster, HarperCollins, if I always go to the back of the book and leave acknowledgments and see who the editor was. And a lot of times, some of these incredible editors have been at houses for years, putting out books that are New York Times bestsellers, making sure that the writer has a beautiful body of work that you follow. And I would love to see that more for Black and brown writers, to have an editor, multiple editors that go to and see like a beautiful body of work. It's not just one book that has popularity and visibility, it's a body of work. So the voices that come to mind are Jacqueline Woodson, Tiara Jones, Ezra Denica. Like, these are literally, they set the precedent in so many ways, but new voices coming up also deserve to have that same nurturing and cultivation, and allowing them to experiment with work too. What I see often is the books tend to land in a space that always show real depictions of African American life, and it's beautiful to have stories that are based in fantasy, that are playing with fan fiction, like doing new things that are unexpected in the field and not always a real depiction of what Black life is.
And that's one of the things that's exciting if you follow it. There's, with self-publishing, there's such a, and I'm traditionally published, but there is such a groundswell of, say, young Black writers who write about futurism, and who write fantasy and who don't feel bound by it, but also they're like, I'm going to write my thing and get it out to my people. Do you have any advice for younger writers about how to be known?
Yeah, I love that question. I think a lot of times when I'm talking to writers, people think it's either or, like you do traditional or you do self-publishing, and it's no. Like, I've worked with so many people that maybe started in self-publishing, to develop their voice more, had a proof of concept, and then gained popularity or visibility, and then went to traditional publishing. It just depends on your temperament, what your end goals are. If it's simply you're trying to build your craft and practice and workshop and work, I think, yes, immediately go to self-publishing. It is a valuable resource, and it's respected too. Like, I think there is this kind of disregard for it because people are like, oh, you have to do it this one way. I don't believe that at all. I think you can self-publish. I also am a big supporter and proponent for indie publishing. Smaller houses like Feminist Press is an excellent press. Grey Wolf is an excellent press that has a lot of actual notoriety. Edward James have prints with them. There's so many other ways to get your work out there, to build community, that you shouldn't just be thinking of traditional publishing.
And we're getting past the gates that are kept, which is very important. One of the things that
she just shouted out Edward Denica. That's one of my favorite authors as well.
And you mentioned that your mother was like, okay, too much in the letter. Tell me about why you chose to include some of the very personal details, like your mother's depression and subjects like that, and what was her response to you talking about that?
Yeah, for so long, the subjects around my mom's depression and my father leaving. In the book, I talk about my father left the United States when I was in the 8th grade, and
he just left.
He left unexpectedly, and so it was a very, we went from reaching for this American dream, white picket house, white picket fence, all these things that felt like we were moving towards upward mobility, and then when he left abruptly, it really changed the trajectory of our household, and put a very big burden on my mother, hence her depression and everything that followed. And I carried these stories with me for such a long time, and I felt like it was a big secret, my own secret. It wasn't like anyone was telling me to keep it away, but I just felt a lot of shame around them. And going through therapy and writing this book allowed me, and also having my son just allowed me to let go of those things and finally have a new perspective on my life and think of them as more as like life lessons. If I hadn't gone through all those things, I wouldn't be sitting on this stage. I don't even think I would have created Well We're Black Girls, to be honest. Like I recently went to the National Book Festival, and one of the authors on stage, she was saying, she was talking about her scholarship, and she was like, I do not write for catharsis, and I was like, I do. I was like, this is the only way that I have this book. I was like, this is like my journal come to life, and you know, and no shade to her, it's just like, it's all good, but like, I definitely needed this like purging, this letting go, in order to just like start afresh and feel like unburdened. And so when you do read this, it's very revealing about who I am, and I was intentional about that. I just wanted to let it go.
You put it so beautifully in the book. You said, I break our silence, I lean into our family storm. Which is just a gorgeous phrase, and I think it is incredibly catharsis, and to me sounds like all of the therapy in the world, which is very amazing. Is there anything you wish you had included that you didn't?
Oh man, so not necessarily. There were things that happened. That's the thing about writing a memoir. I don't know. I want to ask you if you have the experience of feeling like you couldn't stop, like you wanted to add more.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I started it in 2018. I didn't do, or 2019, let's do it up. And I didn't turn in my final draft until the end of 2023. And so, like, if the pandemic happened, I was expecting, like, there were a lot of gaps in between. And so much kept happening. And so I was like, oh, I need to write about this now. Like, I need to add this one more chapter. Or even, like, writing, when I finished, my son was 1, he's now 4, you know? So I kept, like, wanting to add more. And so my editor was like, no, like, these are other books, there are other stories. You can, like, find, you know, you can end it. So I basically stopped when he was an infant but I have more chapters that I wrote out and more things I experienced.
Next book.
Yeah, next book, right? But it was hard for me to think about like where to end the story, because even for a memoir, I'm very young. Like, you know, I feel like most memoirs are you're older, you know. So like I had to like get over that, like thinking like, oh, I'm too young to tell this story. But there was a lot that I felt like could help a lot of people.
Well, it's first, when I grew up in the 90s, Elizabeth Wurtzel wrote Prozac Nation. I remember thinking I was like 25, 24. And I was like, I hope nothing in my life ever happens that's so messed up that I need to write a memoir before I'm 50. And then it did. I was like, well, might as well write about it. Yeah, when I was writing my memoir, I kept adding stuff, and my editor goes, you have to stop at some point.
Yes, that's very, very
And she was
real.
lovely about it.
Yeah.
But you have to. There's a chapter of your book that you talked about books and plays in this instance that influenced how you felt about romance.
Yeah.
And that it was all like really sad, like Romeo and Juliet, and you know, other things where it's like, and then the woman dies, and then they die. I think that's something that I think most, show of hands, particularly young women, when we were younger and all the stuff we get, it's like, and then it's so tragic that they would die for each other. And you're like, no, don't die about it. You're dying.
Yeah.
When did it occur to you? They were like, no, it's not. Dude,
Oh my God, this is recently. Okay, yeah, no, reverse something. I tell this story when I was working shopping the different scenes with my editor. I was talking about the book Jazz. I love the book Jazz.
favorite.
In my mind, it was always like, oh, like a love story.
It's
And she was like, girl, someone dies in the first like 3 pages. Like, what are you talking about? I was like, it's a love story. She's like, read it again. And in my mind, when I first read it, I just was so like enamored with like the sacrifice the women were making, and the like this idea at the end of Jazz, there's this line like, you know, I didn't fall for you, I fell like over, you know, there's all this like so lyrical, and the language of Morrison is just so swoony that I'm like, oh, I like was not doing the close reading of seeing how, you know, just like absurd some of these things are, and how self-sacrificing, and they're not always about love, you know, and there are also different forms of love, right? So like, I was fixated on the romantic instead of thinking about the familial and just like the love of self and self-compassion. So I had to go back and reread so many books with an adult perspective and some lived life to see that like you don't have to, you know, throw yourself away to be in love. You don't have to sacrifice yourself. So I went back and read a lot of bell hooks and a lot of thinking about like a love ethic and working on yourself, like self-love. So I reflect on that from your book.
Yeah, it's like struggle love. Why are we struggling?
Yeah, struggle love. I was loving the struggle.
Right or die? Why do we have to die? And where are we going? I don't truly understand that. You also write, since we're talking about romance, candidly about your relationship with your partner. And there's just this beautiful part that's painful because it's so real where when you talk about silences, about when you stop talking, when he stopped talking to you, what do you learn in silence?
Well, it depends on how the silence is coming. If it's like a self-induced like silence of solitude and self-reflection, I think that is very healthy for you to kind of like clear the noise and articulate what your own needs are. But when you're in a relationship and the expectation is communication, connection, like true heart engagement, for someone to abruptly go silent, it causes so much like internal chaos because you're like, is this my fault? You know, am I the one who is, you know, initiating this? It just causes so much chaos. You start to make up your own narratives in your mind. And so when I was writing about that experience, I really was trying to think about my own internal dialogue because I truly do not know like what he was thinking. I didn't want to put that and I didn't want to write his words. I really wanted to stay true to how I was feeling from, you know, from his actions. And so that silence for me is particularly triggering because of the experience I had with my mother. So when you read the book there, I do go into my mom's depression. It was complicated because she had selective mutism. So there were periods of my mom, of my life, my mom simply did not talk. Like we would just communicate through letters or like gestures or facial expressions. And so when someone goes silent on me, it takes me to a place of just like pure panic of like, okay, what's going on? Is this something beyond just us having a disagreement? Is there a block happening, you know? So it was very challenging that would be his response to our miscommunication or arguments. Like I can't, and even now, like I am the friend that's like, if something's wrong, like let's talk it out immediately because I don't do well with just like ignore, like don't ghost me.
No, exactly. Ghosting is dumb. Your parents obviously are were immigrants from Nigeria, and obviously immigrants, particularly black and brown ones, are in the news a lot right now. So I wanted to give a shout out to the beauty and the importance of the immigrant experience of your parents and your life. Can you tell me how you think your life and you are different because of that experience?
Oh yeah, absolutely. With my parents being from Nigeria and me being first generation, I just have a deep appreciation for the diaspora and this idea of being here because I feel like I definitely hold dualities. You know, I understand the importance of knowing where you're from, going to Nigeria, being connected to that soil and that land, and I also value the experience that I have as a Black American as well, you know, and I also don't want those things to be in like tension with one another. Like I'm very clear that my experience is different from someone who grew up in Alabama or is a descendant from slaves, but I like immensely respect that too. So even when I went to Howard, I did so much the due diligence of understanding like you know, what it means to be from the South. Like I have so many incredible friends that like took me back. Like I've been to Mississippi, I've done things that just show my reverence and respect for the culture of what it means when you say like I'm a Black person. There's just so many multitudes of that, and there are spaces that try to put that in
It is
in friction.
It is very depressing, and we also have to be reminded that social media is not real. It's not the real world. But there's so many discussions back and forth between American descendants of slaves and those from the parts of the diaspora, where it's like we are a people that, particularly those of us like between the American South and the Caribbean, it's like the boat just dropped you off someplace different. You know, we're all the same people from different places, and I want to celebrate.
Oh yeah, and I think it's all valid too though, because there are even things that need further nuance and context and history and exploration and conversations. Like there are so many things that we don't sit down and just candidly talk about them, or even say that like why we disagree, or even having an understanding. Like I have relatives that just have no context, and so like I think trying to break that open is so essential in every aspect, whether we're looking at the stories that are being published, where we're looking at one of my favorite books is by Clint Smith, and How the Word is Passed, and his essentially, he is so adamant about like going to the land. It's like you have to be in the space. Like you have to go down south, you have to go to the continent, and be in the space to really appreciate just like the nuances we have within the Black diaspora,
There's a beautiful part of the book where you meet a young woman that you're sure is African, and she's like, no.
Yeah. No, she didn't say it like that. She was like, why I gotta be African? Like, what's wrong with you? And this is now like my best friend. So this is my roommate from college. We met in media production class. She almost came up today, and she's like the godmother to my kids. We are very close. She's from Seattle. She is stunning, like so beautiful. And when I first met her, my inclination was like, oh, are you from like Senegal? Are you from Sierra Leone? It was just like her. She felt familiar. That's where I thought she was from. And she was just like, girl, like, I don't know, you don't like assume where I'm from. I'm from Seattle. And this is on Howard's campus. And so we ended up having a conversation. I was like, well, my parents are Nigerian. I thought maybe, like, you're very pretty. I just was like, trying to start a conversation. And, fast forward, when she was reading that part of the book, she, like, called me immediately. She's like, I love you so much. I remember that moment. And she's like, I'm going to apologize. I'm like, it's been like 20 years. And you literally come out to apologize. But like it's like that moment of and she is grown up in Seattle, and Seattle is a very like white dominant space, and so that's why she wanted to go to Howard. She wanted to be surrounded by like more black and brown people, and so she's like, I grew up people saying negative things about Africa and calling me names, and so when you said that, it triggered something in me and made me go that way. But now years later, I'm going to say that or not have that reaction. But we are all in this society that makes us feel less than, and says negative things about like our noses and our features and like all kinds of things. So I don't blame that on anyone. It's just amongst us that we communicate and educate one another.
Absolutely. And I grew up here, and then I lived in Florida for a while, and being back here, being between DC sometimes and Baltimore, it's been so wonderful again to be in a community that has so many Black and brown people, and to see yourself reflected. I think, do we have one more question? Did I get one more? Okay, great. One more question. With all the books that you've read, is there a particular one? I don't ask for favorite because it's so hard to ask for favorite, but is there a particular book that is a comfort book for you that you go back to?
Oh wow, good question. I would say I do a lot of poetry. I really love poetry as a comfort book. I probably have read I love Sonia Sanchez. I love Lucille Clifton. We're in Baltimore, the Clifton House. I love the book Generations. I've read several times. I would also say Marita Golden's book, Migrations of the Heart, it was one of her first memoirs, and it talks about her growing up in DC, and she also had a unique experience because she was married to a Nigerian man. It was probably one of the first books where I was like, wow, I can tell a story about being of both places, and I felt that was such a beautiful reflection. I've read that several times.
Well, this has been, I can't believe we're at the end. It seems like I had so many more questions, but that's all right. We'll have to do this some other time. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to start a Q&A.
So hi everyone, give a round of applause again.
So we're gonna open questions up to the audience, and for Q&A. So if you have any questions, just lift your hand and I'll bring the mic to you.
Hi, Glory. Nice to be here. Stephanie Henderson with Books and Bounty. Early in the conversation, you mentioned about how when you were younger, you had a conflict with a teacher and you just didn't have the vocabulary or language to express how you feel. I immediately identified with similar experience in high school, especially college. I went to UVA, and it's a question I guess I also wanted to ask everyone in the room, being that there are a lot of women of color here, their experience with that, but also as an adult, are there times now where you feel like you wish you had the vocabulary? Are there other areas that you want to explore about yourself? Because you said you have other chapters that you're writing, so I'm just curious about, as an adult, sometimes we run into those and sometimes it's hard to admit.
That's a wonderful question, and I do feel like I'm in this path of still discovering who I am and being open to making mistakes in public. This is the thing that is the other side of having a platform that's like that's popular online, and you know, I host a festival. There are all these things that I'm trying to now achieve, but I'm doing it in a public space, so sometimes I feel it's intimidating. So one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm editing more. So I'm working with writers behind the scenes where I'm editing manuscripts and
Let's talk.
I was very intentional about making sure that I did it in partnership with a more established imprint publisher. So I work closely with Live Right, and I have a team. You know, we go back and forth, we look at edits. So I feel like I'm in editing school. You know, so my first book that I've edited is coming out in 2025.
Awesome.
It's with Darcy Daly Ward, who is the poet.
Yes. Yeah.
She's writing her first fiction, and it's spectacular. But it definitely was something that was challenging, and I felt. I feel nervous about. Like, I'm nervous about how it will be received, how everyone will react to it. But I am proud of it. I'm glad that I stretched myself to do it.
Well, that's great. We have to talk. I've been editing all my life, but never had much of the byline stuff. So.
Oh yes, I would love to talk more. You know, I'm from Virginia, so I have a lot of friends that went to UVA.
Yes, when we're the same age, so we may know some of the same folks.
Yeah.
We'll talk later.
Okay. I'm such a fangirl right now, so I'm trying to collect my thoughts. But yeah, I feel like when I was growing up as a kid, there wasn't a lot of children's books that are written by Black authors, and now when I go to bookstores, there's Black, written and also Black characters in so many books, and I'm just interested in how you feel raising a kid and there being all this new literary future that's different than maybe when you were growing up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do feel like there's such an abundance of, books written by Black authors and Black characters, Black protagonists. It is wonderful to take myself to a bookstore and see that.
That is terrible.
I think the only thing that I would like to continue to push forth is what I was speaking to earlier, making sure that the books that are written are diverse in terms of gender, in terms of economics, in terms of backgrounds, continue to just expand that. So with my son, I want to see reflections of little, Black boys. I want to make sure that the stories are just diverse in terms of class too. That's something I think about when I'm reading. Or the makeup of households. So is it a single mother, or is it, two moms, or just whatever the case may be, so more young people can see themselves reflected. And I'm a single mom, so sometimes, he'll pick up a book and he's like, well, that looks different from us. And I'm like, that's okay, families are different. And so there should be more books that just show the makeup of life for all young people, Black and brown. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely very encouraging compared to how it was before.
Any other questions?
Hello. Thank you so much for being here. This is amazing for me. You spoke a lot about having it took you a while to write this book, and you had multiple phases of life, having a son and all of that. So how did you stay focused while you were writing? Having all these different stories coming at you. How did you stay focused on the story?
For anyone who is an aspiring writer, I encourage you to connect well with your editor. So my editor helped me just stay accountable and on task and I didn't, the way my lifestyle is set up, I didn't have like the opportunity to set, an hour in the morning every day to write. I did a lot of the binge writing, so I would take a weekend, I would take 4 days, go into a hotel, go to a writing retreat, and just like write as many words as possible. I also took to writing voice notes, so if I was like taking walks in the morning or like dropping my son in daycare and I had a thought, or even just like one sentence that was like really making me think about it, I would put it in a voice note. I also use an app called Otter to transcribe things. And so I just tried to like make my writing practice part of my life and not like guilt myself. Like I'm supposed to be waking up at 5 and looking at the sunset and sitting at my little secretary desk, like it was overwhelming me, so I just found other ways to write that like fit my lifestyle. And my editor truly kept me on task. Like I would workshop things with her, I would send her pages and we would go back and forth. And even if you don't have like a traditional, quote unquote editor, like even having a friend and having like someone just to workshop work with is so valuable, because if they send you an edit and you disagree with it, and you're like, I don't know, I don't want to have it that way. What it does is make you just like go back and sharpen your argument or sharpen that paragraph. So you're like, I want to answer their questions. Let me just like make the sentence even better. Like let me just like sharpen my words so that question goes away, or you just feel more convicted in what you want to say. Mm-hmm. So just having people like poke holes in things and ask questions, I find it so valuable.
Any other questions?
Well, I have one.
Yeah,
A
absolutely.
question and a comment. First of all, I am a fangirl. I've been to the Well-Read Black Girl festivals, conferences several times. Thank you for talking about sort of the dual cultures. I find that in writing it can be a challenge because I'm actually a double immigrant. So I'm Caribbean, Canadian, and American. And sometimes finding that voice, I write poetry, I'm working on essays, going to write a memoir. It's tough to bring in all those voices. Being in the U.S., because I'm not obviously anything else. So, it is a challenge to combine those three very different experiences into one voice that will still be applicable and interesting to like Americans and everyone else, of course. So I'm looking forward to reading your book to see how those dual stories came together. So was that tough for you, knowing the balance in terms of keeping, your readers engaged? How do you bring in your Nigerian background and American? Just curious.
Yeah, I tried to look for really tangible things that I could connect to that could illustrate that. So food was one of them, thinking about like the food that we eat, thinking about, again, landscape. I have a scene where I'm traveling back to Nigeria and along the plane, and I have a moment where I'm talking to someone who is just like so confident in their cultural heritage, and they're asking me questions about like where I'm from, and they're speaking to me in the language, and I'm just like, I don't understand anything you're saying, but like I also feel very confident that despite me not necessarily knowing how to speak my native language, I can understand it, but it's hard for me to like capture the accent. That doesn't dilute my Nigerianness, like where I'm from. That doesn't take that away. My experience isn't less valid than someone who grew up back home. It's just like, it's just different. And I, it's still something I'm working through, but thinking of other ways to illustrate that, like, even that duality and even the gaps that you don't understand, writing towards that, I think is very valuable, because I think there's so many people, especially in the United States, that can relate to that, who are first gen or perhaps didn't grow up in a space where they were surrounded by folks that look like them. I shouldn't say look like, or from the same background, whether it's Caribbean, Canadian, Nigerian. There's so much of that, and I actually want. I've had some conversations from folks that are, non-POC that are like, oh, actually my family's from Germany, or or they're from this place, but it's a different. It's a different relationship. It's probably a longer conversation because they're white passing, right? But they're from somewhere else. I have a good friend who is Russian, and people don't think of her as Russian, but like they just think she's white. But she's like, oh, I'm actually Russian, and I grew up there, and this and that. So like there's a universality of just being culturally aligned and thinking about what it means to be American and what it means to be from another place. So, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I think we should just explore more of it.
Any more questions? Turn it over to you.
I just once again want to thank you guys for being here. I want to thank you. Just so excited that this festival is happening. I was supposed to have been, I think in 2019. We said, oh, it's going to be in 2020. Ha ha. Yeah, so 2020 didn't happen for me, but I'm so excited to not only be back in my hometown, but to be part of something that's so organic and so wonderful, and to be sitting across from you is just amazing. We hang around. There is a book signing possible, and our next event.
Yes, so first of all, just for the book signing, just next to us in front of this tent is Greedy Reads, and you can purchase a copy of Glory's books there, and then go to the table at the front of the tent for a book signing. And stay tuned, because at 1:30, the Queendom of Literary Woman will be right here. So come back on time, and it'll be a moderated conversation with the Sisterhood of Writers.
A reminder about the evaluations. There's
Right. Also, please, before you leave, go to our city lit table to my left, your right, and scan the QR code, because your evaluations mean a lot for us. It lets us know what's working. So if you could do that as well, and if any of you are interested in making a donation, there's another QR code right beside that. Thank you for your time, and hope to see you back at 1:30.
Can I just say one more thing too? City Lit is noted for being very kind of informal. We want you to engage. I'm sorry. We really want you to engage with these authors. This is your chance to ask those questions. They're going to answer them. We like real life conversations. We want writers in the audience to talk to Glory about writing, the struggle. Leslie too. Leslie's been named the best columnist in Baltimore by that Baltimore magazine. We're telling you, do not be shy. We open this up for authentic conversations. Like our next set will be called the Queendom of Literary Women. You're going to talk to or hear from 5 organizations that value sister scribes, who value the writing around the idea of sisterhood and what it means to be a woman writing in these days, where we're being initially attacked.
And I also want to just give a huge shout out to Carla. You are such a beautiful beacon of light. You're encouraging. I remember when we first met, you were just like a warm embrace. Thank you for your love, for your support. And thank you for inviting me here. I love Baltimore. I come here often. I love Afro Charities. I love City Lit, the Clifton House. Like, this is a beautiful space, and I'm very close to, and my son loves it too.
Yes. No, we value you, Glory. She puts on this incredible, well-read Black Girl Festival. And let me tell you, it is a thing. If you find your way, I think it was in D.C. last time. It's going back to New York.
It's going to be in New York this year, on October 26th, and at the Museum of Moving Image.
She is an influencer. She's getting people to pick up books, write about books, talk about books. We value that. But thank you. She'll be back with us for the next event. But try your books, buy your books, buy Leslie's books.
Please pre-order. Please pre-order.
Yes. Can you hold the book up?
It's called, I have postcards. I'll pass them out.
Okay, it's called Gather Me.
Gather Me. At your favorite indie bookstore or retail location.
Thank you both. Thank you. One more. 1, 2, 3. Now we're gonna do a silly one, okay?
Oh, fabulous.
Oh dear.
I can put my umbrella down. Couple one of them. You put your bag in one, I guess. And then we just need like one more. That's like me with Ravens. Louise and are like, we're gonna get stomped. And we're like, I don't even know how we're slightly favored. I'm like, are you kidding? Have you been? I got you. Yeah. I know. I mean, it's still early, but like, Rhea, that's Rhea. You know, it's one of these things where it's nice to start with a question in case you guys are down something. And Amy said work's going well for you?
Yeah.
I know she's enjoying the
Yeah.
She talks about that already.
Yeah, she might have.
Right. I don't know, she's like at school, like and you've been hanging out with her house and some of her. Oh, yeah. Yeah, she told me about
It's in Boston. So I'm in Boston.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm excited.
And what beach are you going to? Dewey. Yeah.
I think it's after. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so I was like,
very like easy, so they have. I mean, they stay very easy too. Last week they had, I mean, I've been to different reviews. They had a really fun trivia. I've never seen it done this way. Like, call out the answer right answer and you got it right over your head. It was very interesting. I've never seen it done that way. And everybody's they have the outdoor area and the indoor area. And then they added
It's only outside.
got it. Yeah. Someone often when they drop me here. We used to wear black flags when there was the outdoor, they didn't want out. Not a community.
Okay.
I think so.
Right here. Okay. You see that? That's your cute little thing. Good afternoon, good people. Good afternoon. behind the scenes to make this moment happen. We're very, very thankful that you're here. This was so hot. I don't want to touch it, you know what happens. But this is really a joyful moment. This session is called the Queendom of Literary Women. Right. And I'm going to try to be really, really intentional. My name is Carla Dupre, the Executive Director of City Lit Project.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us for the return of the Baltimore Book Festival. It is the 25th year of the festival. We have not been in session since 2019, but we are back. The power of collaboration is a huge thing. We want to thank Red Emmas. We want to thank Waverly Main Street, Peabody Brewery, the Mayor's Office, Councilwoman Odette Ramos. We want to thank members of the vocal staff, especially Delaney Kate, Tia Goodson, and Rachel DeTone. We also want to thank the Clifton House for partnering with us on several of our events. And Greedy Reads, our independent bookstore. Our festival bookstore for today. But I'm especially thankful for my City Lit Gladiators. Can you just raise your hand because they are some of my people. You know about that show called Scandal? You know, Scandal, she has her gladiators who do all those things. That's why ours are called gladiators, because they take care of it. They don't kill people, but they take care of it. But I also want to give a strong welcome. She's probably out running around. Lillian Jacobson. Yes. My new executive assistant, let me tell you. 8 years. I was 8 years without an executive assistant, but now that I have one, she is top shape. Let me tell you, she is fire. I love her. Lillian, just wave your hands so people know who you are. I also want to shout out our fellow board members, Kate Barker, this is part of our leadership council, Bunny Barker, Sharon Woods, Brian Love. I'm sorry if I missed. I should have wrote that list and I didn't, but thank you to all the board members that are here. Tracy Diamond, our vice chair, my goodness. Our interim chair, Greg Wilhelm. There are a number of people here today that really have just done so many wonderful things for City Lit. We're very thankful. If you got a bookmark, I hope everybody has one. Because City Lit keeps a bookmark. It's our traditional one, designed by Insight 180, a women-owned graphic company that's been making us look good for 8 years. We're so thankful for them. But before